Unlike linear gradients, radial gradients start at the center of an object and then radiate to another color outwards. Let's take a look. I'm working in the same gradient fills file that I was working in the previous movie, which you could find in the exercise files in Chapter 10. I'll go ahead and I'll select the surfboard. I'll apply this regular linear gradient, but here in the gradient panel I'll change the type from linear to radial. You could see over here that the actual gradient itself looks pretty much the same as it did when it was linear. I have two color stops, one that's white, one that gradually moves towards black, and I have the midpoint indicator here. However, you'll notice that the center of the gradient is now in the middle of the object, and it radiates outwards towards the other color here. And just as I was able to edit the linear gradients using that gradient widget in context, I can do the same thing for radial gradients, although now with a few extra options. I'll go to the gradient tool inside of the tool panel, click on it, and I now see that gradient widget here. When I mouse over the gradient, I also see a dotted line which identifies the circle for where that particular gradient goes. As I did before, I can click anywhere beneath the slider over here to add additional colors. If I want to change its color, I can double click on that and bring up my swatches or my color panel to choose any color that I like. Likewise, I can also change the opacity value for any selected color stop. I can either move the entire circle around by clicking on this circle right here and changing the position of this gradient. So now the gradient starts, let's say, from over here or over here, so on and so forth. I also have the ability to click on this little circle here to adjust exactly where the center point of that gradient is, but by keeping the circle the same. So this allows me to think about my ability to really offset that center to not be directly in the center of the radial part of the gradient, but towards one end of the gradient here. I can also come over here towards the end and rotate the gradient this way. And you'll notice that if I mouse over the gradient itself, that dotted line has a few extra icons on it. For example, if I come over here to this end and I click on this, this allows me to scale the overall size of that particular radial gradient. Maybe it could be very small, for example, or I can make it very large. Additionally, when I mouse over this gradient, towards the top over here, there's a black dot. If I click on that, this actually allows me to skew the particular circle to make it more of an oval type gradient. As with the linear gradients, I also have the ability to simply click on the little icon right here, drag it into my swatches panel to now save that particular gradient that I've created as a swatch, which I can now apply to other objects.